Hey, Jana, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm so excited to chat with you. I think this is
Yes.
your third episode on the podcast. I was
Oh my
just,
gosh. I'm a regular.
yeah, you're uh, you're a veteran. But yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while, actually, because a lot of clients, and I think, you have mentioned as well, like I've had clients come to me and be like, we want to rank in Google with Pinterest. Like this is a thing. Like, how do we do this? And I think it's interesting, like these kind of platforms, how they like meet and there's like parallels, right? So of course I immediately thought Pinterest, Jana, like we need to talk about this. We just need to have an episode where we can point people and say these are our thoughts and this is like what we recommend. And I think it's a good strategy, right? So it can be interesting. So before we dive in, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jana. I am a Pinterest marketing strategist and educator. And I have been doing Pinterest marketing for about 7 years. And I work primarily with coaches and course creators and service-based businesses using Pinterest. And that's a little different because a lot of Pinterest strategists and Pinterest marketers think more about strategies and have been working with clients that are like e-commerce sellers or are bloggers who are monetizing their blogs like as a business.
Right.
And I actually work specifically with coaches and other service-based businesses and course creators and digital product creators as well. Um, and yeah, I've been doing this, like I said, for about 7 years, and I love working with this particular group of people. I also work with a lot of health and wellness coaches in particular. That's kind of like a niche within my niche. And I know you have a lot of experience with those folks too. So we have a lot of crossover with with the worlds that we're in with our businesses.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like I just everybody listening, I'm trying to convince Dana to do a joint venture launch with me because I feel like we have a lot of things in common and we've been kind of like this biz bestie and like this is it'd be fun. But anyway, we'll see if that happens sooner rather than later.
I think it will.
Um
I think it will.
so for some of you who are like, I don't like, what's this topic? So basically, this idea of like you're ranking in Google, you're showing up in the search results, but it's your Pinterest, like a board or a Pinterest profile or something from Pinterest is showing up in Google. And this can happen, just to give you guys context, this can happen on many different platforms, right? It's obviously YouTube is another really great example because YouTube and Google are the same. And so there's some searches that can be really great for that. But there's lots of different places that Google grabs information from. And so this can be a way to just attract those types of audiences who are on Pinterest, but are using Google almost, right? I don't know, Jana, if you have any perspectives on like just from the outside, how this looks as like a final product or like a marketing strategy.
Yeah, I'll actually tell you a quick story that I think will really, it's going to be an example of how this can show up in your business.
Right.
I worked a bunch of years ago. I mean, not like a bunch, but I don't know, a few years ago with a coach, a health coach who is specializes in working with people with Lyme disease and autoimmune conditions. And we had set up her Pinterest profile. It was a pretty new Pinterest profile, actually. She had hired me to do so. We set it up using all of the best practices and my framework for setting up a strategic Pinterest profile that attracts clients, because that's what her goal is to get more health coaching clients, one-to-one clients. And we created, as part of that initial setup, a bunch of boards and a bunch of pins that were keyword optimized because Pinterest is a search engine, right? And technically we're keyword optimizing them for Pinterest, but there's a lot of crossover between what people search on the different platforms. And a few weeks after we got her profile all like set up and optimized, I got a message from her saying that someone who she had never heard of before, had never heard of her before, in a different part of the country than where she is, had Googled a very specific symptom, I think it was, of Lyme disease. And when they Googled that, in the top, 3 or 4 results at the top of the page one of the options that came up for them to click on page one of Google was her Pinterest pin. I believe it was a pin, not a board, but it was either a pin or a board of hers where we had used that keyword about that very, very specific thing, that symptom
Right.
essentially.
Right.
And that person clicked on her pin, chose to click on the link that went to her Pinterest pin, looked at the Pinterest pin, clicked through that Pinterest pin to her blog post that she had written about that topic, which, by the way, did not rank on page one of Google at this point.
Right.
We can talk about a little bit about maybe why that might have been. And read the blog post and followed the call to action and booked a call with her and became a paying client.
Right.
So this, her Pinterest pin got her on page one of Google and got her a client. And it's kind of amazing, and I want to be clear, like, this doesn't happen like all the time, like as soon as you set up a new Pinterest profile, right?
Right.
This is a little bit of an outlier, but
Right.
it is possible. And it's not the only time I've heard of it happening. So that's really what you're talking about. And that's the example I wanted to give people who are listening so that they can kind of conceptualize what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great example. And it's nice to have these outliers to have examples. But I think the point is that there can be, in some cases, kind of because Pinterest, like if we look at this from the SEO side, so basically what I'm thinking is I'm going to talk about the SEO side, and then, we'll go back and Jana will talk about the Pinterest side, right? Because we both have our perspectives, and like, if someone's listening, it's like, I want this, right? So from the SEO side, Pinterest as an authority and as a website is a big deal, right? So it's going to always be a bigger deal for Pinterest to rank in general, right? It depends on what the question is or the query, but Pinterest, it just has more entity, right? It's like, we all know what Pinterest is. So it almost gives us that edge. Like, if you want to rank for something and you're doing well, or like that part of your Pinterest profile, whether it's your pin or your board, has that information, Google's going to pull from that, and they're going to trust that Pinterest is going to give them that information. So I think it can be an interesting strategy. Now, my only small asterisk of a thing here is that, and we've talked about this, is that this can't be the first thing you go after. Like, you have to have, I feel like, a foundational SEO strategy that you've already at least gone through a couple rounds of iterations and done a good job of that. I don't believe in tricking the algorithm or doing those kind of things, because I know a lot of people might be like, oh, this is like a quick fix trick thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, if you want to try things that we suggest and do it that way. But I feel like you want to do SEO right, and start with a nice foundational SEO strategy. And then when you do have some time, you can experiment with these alternative strategies, right? And get ranked differently. So that's that. So from the SEO side, there's a couple things that you can do that's actually very similar than what you would do with just if you're ranking a blog post, but there's a couple things. So the first thing is researching your keywords, right? So thinking about, why would Google rank a Pinterest board or some Pinterest boards? In many cases, like what Pinterest is, it's visual, right? So there is some visual elements. And so sometimes when we have that search results with the Pinterest board or the Pinterest pin, it gives that person a little bit more of a visual view that maybe they're wanting, right? So you want to research your keywords and see, what is Google prioritizing right now? So if Pinterest is already showing up in the search results, that could be an indicator that, hey, you could maybe, optimize your Pinterest profile to show up for that. Or it could be something that you feel could be like a good Pinterest, something you already have on Pinterest that would show up well on Google. So an example of this is always list posts. I see do really well with Pinterest stuff. Lifestyle content, obviously, but something really specific and to the grain, right? So, specific question, or a list of things, like a list post. Again, those can be kind of great posts to start to look at and think about, okay, could I rank for this in Google? And then the other thing, again, this is very similar to doing keyword research for your website, is to look at your competition, right? So do you have other boards that are competing with you, or are there other things in the search results showing up? And like, how are you wanting to like overcome those or differentiate yourself, right? So usually in the search results, Google gives us a variety of options because they want to see which, it's almost like a test, right? So they try to give us kind of like a contrast so that there's a different, like, all the results are relevant, but sometimes they're different, right? Because they want to see like which one of these is the best option. So sometimes they might show a Pinterest option, but they'll show other things too. So being aware of that competition inside the search results can help us just distinguish ourselves and to say, okay, I'm going to take this approach and see how it does versus like some other option that's showing up in the search results, and it's like competition, right? So that's kind of like the SEO side. I want to turn it over to you, Jana, now and talk about what you can specifically do inside of Pinterest once you have your keywords and you see the search results and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I have like 3 ideas or 3 things that I would suggest that someone do over on the Pinterest side to try to see if they can get this kind of result. And the first thing I want to just say before I light into that is that I totally hear what you're saying about, this can't be like your first, like this can't be the whole thing. Like
Right.
if you end up with getting the kind of story, like the story I told a few minutes ago about that health coach, I consider that kind of like gravy or icing on the cake
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? As opposed to the cake itself,
Right.
or the turkey or whatever. And I feel the same way. If someone were to come to me and say, hey, I want you to set up my Pinterest profile for me. I'm ready to invest at that level where you do it for me, because I do offer that. And I say to them, great, what are your goals? And they say, well, my number one goal is to show up with my pins on Google. And that's the only thing I want. And that's what I want from my Pinterest strategy. And that's going to be like, and I'm getting a feeling from them that like, that's the make or break thing. And they'll be happy if they do, and they won't be happy if they don't. That's going to be hard. You know what I mean? Like, I want someone who wants Pinterest and then would love it if this also happened, kind of thing,
Right.
So, right. But over on the Pinterest side, I think there's a few things you can do. Number one, understand that there are 7 places on Pinterest where your keywords go. And I'll rattle them off, but I'll also share a resource with you so that if you don't get to write all these down, if you're out walking your dog and listening to this podcast, don't worry, there'll be a place in Cynthia's show notes too to get this. But adding keywords to your profile name, your bio, your board titles, board descriptions, and then to your Pinterest pins themselves in 3 different places. So the pin title, the pin description, and the text overlay. And again, I know that sounds like a lot, but don't worry. You can go back later and write it down and start working on it. And if you keyword optimize your profile properly and your pins properly, that's going to be the first step in some of this magic maybe beginning to happen, for you. I've seen in Google searches, Pinterest pins, Pinterest boards, and Pinterest profiles. All 3 of those types of things have shown up in Google search results for certain things. So you want to make sure you're doing all the optimization you can. And there's a framework to follow. So don't worry. Again, it's not overwhelming, but you want to make sure you're adding the keywords that you've found through your keyword research or being searched on Pinterest in all of those places, because you never know what opportunities are out there. You never know what Google is going to think is a good search result. It could be your board about that thing. It could be your pin about that thing, or it could be your profile as a whole, right?
Right.
So making sure you're looking at it holistically and using keywords in all the right places on Pinterest, not just trying to jam a bunch of them that you think are going to help you on Google into a pin or a board or something like that and crossing your fingers and hoping, right? So having that holistic approach. And then the second thing I want to say is that one of the things that I know for sure helped my client that I was talking about earlier get found on Google with her Pinterest pin is that you may remember I said it was a very specific symptom related to a very specific disease that she helps people with, right? And so I always teach, for many reasons, not just because I want your pins to show up on Google, because again, that would be great. I always teach to get very specific with your Pinterest keywords that you want to rank for, because Pinterest is not as big as Google, but it is still a pretty big search engine. It's the 3rd largest search engine, right? So we need to get pretty specific with our keywords, because it's going to be really hard to rank on Pinterest and get found for a word like healthy eating, for example. But if you specialize in something very specific, let's say you help, you work with women on their fertility journey, and you find out that foods for fertility, for example, maybe is being searched, that's more specific. So we want to get specific with our keywords. And reason number 45 to get specific with your keywords is that could put you in a position, you know what I mean, to maybe get found on Google this way too. And if you think about it, Pinterest is a smaller search engine. So that means that a specific keyword that's specific on Pinterest, that's like long tail on Pinterest, this is getting a little nerdy, but might be more general in the world of Google, because how do I explain this? Hopefully I'm explaining this right, but we want to be even more specific, I guess, than we would even think normally to be if this is part of the strategy, because if it's hard to rank for healthy eating on Pinterest, it's going to be really hard to rank for healthy eating on Google, which is the big mama search engine, right? So being specific, which is what I teach anyway, is a good way to set yourself up to potentially experience this little magical thing we're talking about today. So the first thing is make sure you're optimizing all your profile and pins, not just, one little area. The second thing is to get specific with your keywords. And then the third thing I wanted to mention was I noticed every time I've ever looked at this for a client, I've always noticed that the pins that do show up in these searches on Google are almost always older. These older pins and these older boards.
Right.
So it looks like seasoning may play a role in this. It probably does. And it's a little hard to know for sure, but it stands to reason that it does. And so getting started now and knowing that over time, Pinterest grows over time, much like your Google SEO strategy goes over time. Neither of these are overnight, get rich quick kinds of strategies. And so knowing that putting this strategy in place now, and that this may pay off for you in a year or 2 years or 3 years or even 4 years or more, having that more long-term mindset to it, and knowing that if you get set up now, you could experience these results at some point in the future. Maybe it's within the first month, like my client in the story I told,
Right.
or maybe it's down the road. Like, for example, I did a Google search the other day for a certain search term that we were wondering about for a client. And all 3 of the Pinterest entries that came up on page 1 of Google were all from 2019 and earlier.
Wow.
So maybe it's going to be longer down the road, So it's, hopefully I'm articulating that right. I think the third thing is remember that this needs to be a long-term strategy. This is not something that, is definitely going to happen quickly. And keeping that in mind, I think, is important. So.
Yeah, and it can be, I think that this could be a specific goal, but it could be like partnered with just doing stuff on Pinterest and SEO, right? So
it should be, really.
Yeah, like I'm not, I guess, yeah, the disclaimer we're saying is like, we just don't, this isn't like a backdoor fix everything sort of solution, but
Right.
you could do, like, if someone's getting started with their SEO, their Pinterest strategy, both this year, we're like congratulating you. You could also take a little bit of extra time and see like, could I like see if the Pinterest strategy I'm taking here, could there be an SEO edge to this? Or, could I combine some of the keyword research? And I mean, you should be sharing your blog post on Pinterest anyway, right? So, so there could be just like a little bit more of an intention there, and hey, like that could work, right?
Yeah. And actually, you just said something that sparked a thought for me too. My client who I described earlier, the only reason this happened is because she pinned her blog post on Pinterest.
Right.
Right. So it's not like she just created a graphic that said, hey, here's the symptom, and that was it.
Right.
She linked that graphic, because that's what we do on Pinterest, to the blog post that she had written about it, which was a helpful, useful, inspiring in some ways blog post that literally helped someone and inspired them into action to book a call with her, a discovery call. So yeah, for sure. I agree with it. It's got to be really part of a strategy. And I definitely think it's not a magic backdoor thing that's all of a sudden gonna definitely work for you tomorrow. If it was, we'd be doing it and getting rich.
Yeah. And then like a little bonus I guess, step, and I'm curious also to hear your side of this, but with all experiments, I recommend just tracking your results. So if this is something you really want, start to monitor that keyword, like set some reminder on your calendar, on a monthly basis. Look at your SEO keywords and look at also the keywords that you're like, hey, these are the ones that I'd also curious to see, maybe could I show up with Pinterest on. Do a little bit of research and look at like what else is Pinterest ranking for, right? And this doesn't have to be super time consuming. It could be, 20 minutes per month to like look at your search console and look at the actual search results. Like a lot of people want to hear like a tool, like a specific SEO tool. Honestly, you can just use the search results, just like search and use the search results. And that's also fine. And so that way you can just track that progress. The search console will help you though see how you're ranking in like SEO terms. So you'll be able to see like how many clicks and impressions if you're on page 1, 2, 3 or beyond. And so you can see month over month, are you going up? Are you going down? Like what's the trend? And that can be really helpful. I don't know, Jana, from the Pinterest side of the analytics, if there's anything they can look at to like just see how things are doing.
Yeah, we have tools on Pinterest, our analytics dashboard, to see which topics and pins and things like that are performing the best in terms of different metrics on Pinterest. So we can tell what's getting the best reach, what's getting the best engagement. And engagement on Pinterest, by the way, is totally different than it is on social media. It's not
Right.
comments and likes.
Hmm.
What's getting the most outbound clicks to your website in terms of topics. But there isn't anything there that is going to show you how your pins are ranking on Google, or if they're
Right.
ranking on Google. Like we won't really be able to see anywhere on Pinterest analytics, whether your pin is being indexed on Google and showing up on page 64, which it could be, but we don't know that. Unfortunately,
Right.
there's no way to know that to my knowledge. Actually, that would be whoever's listening, if you can develop an app that would help us with that, that would be really cool.
Yeah. There are tools. So for SEO, I use a tool called Ahrefs that does let me see like what parts, like what feature snippets or what different aspects of the search results have different, how do I say this? It like tells me, okay, in this keyword, you've got your like what people ask, or like you're in this part of the search results. So you do kind of get that. I don't, but it wouldn't
It
tell
wouldn't
you,
show
it
Pinterest
wouldn't
pins
show
though,
you
right?
Pinterest. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it still could be maybe helpful because it could give you some clues. I don't know. It could be part of like your research, but I still feel like, yeah, the only way you'd find out is by searching and
Hmm.
looking and
Yeah.
just doing it manually, which is
Hmm.
fine. Again, like I always tell people, like these tools are helpful, but they're not gonna, you still need to use your human brain, right? And like look
Yeah.
at that strategy. And
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like the tool is actually distracting from like the real work that you have to do, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else like missing from that. It feels pretty simple actually, if you think about it. You have to just do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting because it's simple and yet mysterious. There is
Yeah.
some mystery to how this happens for some people and for some who, Pinterest pins and not others.
Hmm.
And then it's also simple in terms of the things you can do to set yourself up to maybe have a better chance for this to happen.
Yeah.
But there's that space in the middle, right, between what we know we can do and that mysterious result that always makes things interesting. But we
Yeah.
wouldn't want it. I was going to say we wouldn't want it any other way, but maybe we would. I don't know.
I think the key is to like find those keywords that are like more likely to show Pinterest results, which is
Mhm.
that first step I mentioned of like doing that research, like just going about your day to day, even if this could be part of a market research, exercise of just like searching and seeing what your client searches and seeing what's in the search results now. And then when you notice that Pinterest comes up, make note, like that's a keyword you want to target. So yeah, I think just knowing that that keyword is already showing up with Pinterest in the search results is going to get you like halfway there almost. And then you could have a bunch of keywords where you are kind of flying blind and you're like, okay, these could show up in Google. I'm just going to optimize these and, you know, hope maybe that one of these will show up as a search result.
Yeah. And I think that's where the specificity thing comes in. I think that if people try to do this, but they're just too general with the keywords they're using on their Pinterest profile and their Pinterest pins and their boards, it's like you're getting colder, not warmer if you do that, right? Whereas if you can get more specific, you're getting warmer, I think.
I like that. Yeah. Cool. Oh, that was good. I'm glad we like broke that down a little bit more, and it got me thinking a little bit, how can I support, you know, those of you who do want to do those more advanced strategies, because they're legitimate. They're just again, like some people think there's like these secret things, and it's like this is complementing what you would already do. So it's just like you said, the icing on the cake in many cases. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jana. Where can people find you, hang out with you? I know you have like a workshop that or a webinar you like to share.
Yeah, a lot of times when people find me, they are, especially if they're coaches and course creators and service-based businesses, they are just kind of getting Pinterest curious or just wanting to kind of learn the basics. So I created a free Pinterest marketing masterclass. It's called the 5 Secrets for Using Pinterest to Grow Your Audience on Autopilot and Get Clients. And I created it for a few reasons. It's a lead magnet for me. So if you opt into it, you'll also be adding yourself to my email list, and you'll get my emails, which I send out a few times a week, which I think are great and valuable too. I hope you'll agree. But I also created
they are. Jana's emails are always so good. I'm like,
thanks.
I'm impressed by your email game, but yeah, no, they're good. She puts a lot of time and thought, and they're nice to read too.
Well, it's actually my main platform. Like it's my main connection to my audience. So I really do. I go email first. But the other reason I created that free masterclass, and I know it'll probably be in your show notes, but people can also go to my website, janaomedia.com, and it's like right there. You'll be able to access it. But I created it so that people have an opportunity to just dip their toe in and learn from me and learn the basics, so that they can, first of all, figure out if people are even searching for their topics on Pinterest. I show you a little bit about that, and then decide if it's a good, fit for their business, and then learn the basic things that you really need to know in the beginning when you're first getting started, so that you get better results faster. So that is my free masterclass. And if anyone's curious about Pinterest, interested in it, especially if you're a coach or a course creator or a service-based business type of person, I would definitely recommend starting there, so you can learn the basics for free and then figure out what you want to do next.
Love it. Yeah, I will include that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you again for coming on here and sharing your knowledge. And I don't know, just I'm really grateful for our online friendship / biz bestie relationship.
Me too. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Jana.